Well, hello there, and welcome, one and all, to PsychoSocial Healing zero point 0.5. This is a 5-week free workshop released for viewing each Sunday at 7 p.m. GMT, touching on the topics of our social nature, anxiety, stress, trauma, and self esteem. This is the abridged version of PsychoSocial Healing 1.0, which is now available at www.psychosocialhealing.com. I'm offering a limited time discount for those who join me on this journey. So for as long as this course is live, the offer will be available. I want to offer my most sincere thanks for making the investment of time to participate, and in doing so, investing in yourself. Seriously, I want that investment to be worth it, and you want that investment to be worth it. The investment of your one true premium, the one investment you can never get back, your time. Investing in your growth enough to do the exercises, come back each week, and being serious enough to change is what will make this course worth your time. And as I said, you're not getting this time back. So it's best to treat this time for its priceless nature and squeeze the absolute most out of me and yourself. None of this will work unless you do. With that in mind, I am so excited about sharing with you what has been years and years of study, action, growing from adversity, engaging in psychotherapy and doing lots of inner work, distilled down to 5 chapters with exercises at the end for you to internalize the lessons learned. Today is chapter 2, anxiety, one of our most insidious inner demons. We will be simplifying and discussing the complex neuroscience behind anxiety and discovering better ways of dealing with it, with help from an unusual source. So, grab a notepad, lock in, and let's dive in. I want you to sit up straight in your chair, close your eyes, and picture the following scenario. I want you to imagine that you have been approached as someone knowledgeable about XY topic to write and give a public speech on that topic. You have been given a month to write it, and it needs to be about 20 minutes long. Of course, the first thing you do is procrastinate for 2.5 weeks. Then, as the realization dawns that you're running out of time, you think about the amount of free time you have and whether you can write it in time. You think about adding humor because you read somewhere that that helps, but you don't consider yourself a funny person. As the days go by and you haven't yet put pen to paper or even prepared, you begin to wonder, will this reflect badly on me or others if I screw up? I'm not sure if I feel adequate to the task. The deadline looms even closer, and you've only done the smallest amount of preparation, resigning yourself to have to wing it on the day. And that day does finally arrive, and with a sense of trepidation, clutching your very rough notes, you walk up to that podium. Now, open your eyes, and I want you to bring your focus to how you feel in your body right now. After listening and empathizing with this story, you're likely to be experiencing anxiety. Anxiety, however, isn't all bad. In fact, it's a crucial survival tool. Without it, you would have no concern for your life, your well-being, or anything that matters. It is the thing that signals and urges you into action, for example, fleeing from a threat. However, too often we only hear about anxiety in its toxic form, when patterns and habits of anxiety don't get addressed or resolved, so they get internalized and sustained. When stuck in anxiety, everything feels like it's a threat. You will view the world through the lens of a paranoid threat vigilance, and you will see threats everywhere. You will trust the world and yourself less. You will take fewer risks and take fewer chances, and you will actually disown and discount your successes. This is a debilitating and cruel habitual dysfunction. As I said in the introduction, it's one of our most insidious inner demons because it sneaks its way in through the back door, as it were, and takes a hold of us, overwhelming us, possessing us. And from there, we sabotage and betray ourselves and deny ourselves the beauty of life. The anatomy of anxiety. Let's go through what's happening inside us when we feel anxiety. Meet the amygdala. This is the center for what could be called the threat reflex. Similar to how we have bodily reflexes, the amygdala performs the function of reflexively activating in response to threats. It's your red alert system, to use a Star Trek analogy. When the amygdala identifies a perceived threat, danger, or necessity for action, it signals down the autonomic nervous system, and our bodies respond in a state of excitement or autonomic arousal. The autonomic nervous system has two main branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Think of the sympathetic like the gas pedal on a car, and the parasympathetic is like the brakes. So in this perceived threat scenario, the sympathetic nervous system is activated and we are ready to either fight, flee, freeze, or fawn. Depending on the perceived threat and how we respond, it can either be a brief spike in our experience, or it could just be another spike of many in a consistent experience of anxiety. A key imperative to keep in mind as you are dealing with anxiety is to be mindful of your thoughts, for they become the bedrock of your thinking. The brain batches things together for efficiency. It served your survival to feel fearful of that noise from the darkness, so the feelings are incorporated into the experience and are also activated when you have a similar experience. Keep in mind the words of Rick Hanson from his book Hardwiring Happiness. Neurons that fire together wire together. Mental states become neural traits. Day after day, your mind is building your brain. The structure building processes of the nervous system are turbocharged by conscious experience, and especially by what's in the foreground of your awareness. Your attention is like a combination spotlight and vacuum cleaner. It highlights what it lands on and then sucks it into your brain, for better or worse. And so when you are doing inner work, you are working to unwire stuff that has become unconsciously wired together. If you don't do the work of unwiring, then the problem will become more difficult to resolve. Each time your anxiety is triggered, the negative stories start rolling, and before you know it, you're headed for panic. So in this state, what the hell do we do? Maladaptive coping, of course. When we are stuck in an anxiety loop, we engage in maladaptive coping strategies to fight or succumb to the feelings of anxiety. In an upcoming chapter on self-esteem, we'll actually go through a larger version of this. But just to give you a sense of how anxiety locks into us, this is the path we take when trapped in anxiety. Starting at the top with our trigger situation, we then go down a dizzying spiral to activation of the core belief. Beliefs such as, I am bad, I am worthless, I am stupid, etc. If in the moments of activation we give in to the thought that a core belief is active, a trap door opens under us and we go straight down to confirmation of the core belief, the very bottom of this cycle. Here we say things like, I knew that was going to happen. I knew the problem was me. I really can't get anything right, etc. Assuming that doesn't happen though, we go to negative predictions. Here we give a voice and credibility to our underlying assumptions in either a passive approach or an active one. Passively, we go through anxiety, then right back to negative predictions, forming what I like to call a passive anxiety loop. Actively, we go to unhelpful behaviour, for example, self-sabotage, catastrophizing, and rumination. This, of course, leads to negative predictions, and then anxiety, and then round and round we go in what I like to call an active anxiety loop. Whether we're taking this loop actively or passively, our anxiety compounds, for we are feeling anxious about feeling anxious. Self-sabotage. This is the insidious and unconscious things we do to match our life to a perception of undeserving. Our sense of worthiness is like a sphere that we live inside. This is the realm of what we feel we do deserve. And any time we move close to the border of this sphere, sometimes referred to as a glass ceiling, our brain will start sounding a proximity alert, warning us that we're about to be having something that we feel undeserving of, or even worse, an achievement that elevates us above our current self-estimate. And our sense of self, the stories we tell about how little we deserve, will fight for their life. Thoughts, rationalizations, and excuses for passivity or humility start coming in. You're about to create new evidence that you are not that useless waste of space, that you are not a complete failure. You will struggle with the implications of this new identity. It scares us to the core, for that is where this negative self-estimate resides. This is why so much of this is difficult and takes discipline to unwire, because it's at the core of us, our core beliefs. As a result, we have multiple ways to self-sabotage. For instance, catastrophizing. When we catastrophize, we see everything through the lens of the worst case scenario. We tend to overemphasize and overestimate the perceived threat while de-emphasizing and underestimating our ability to cope. I'll say this again because it's critically important. We tend to overemphasize and overestimate the perceived threat while de-emphasizing and underestimating our ability to cope. We will be seeing everything that is wrong while being blind to everything that is right. This is a perfect storm of anxiety and helplessness, to feel like you are facing the harshest odds with the weakest defenses. This state of mind actually creates and exacerbates states of anxiety, depression, and stress. Our negativity bias is working on overtime, making us perceive as much as possible as a threat because we mistakenly think that being prepared for all these threats will prevent them from visiting us. However, we often notice that the exact opposite happens. In our catastrophizing, we will be rejecting realistic thoughts for negative ones, and we will be acting in a way that sabotages ourselves. We will reject help from people and dismiss opportunities as too risky. And then at the end of it all, we say, see, I knew that was going to happen. We will either deny our role in bringing about our downfall, or we will hyper-focus on the idea that it was all our fault and that we deserve the negative results. This understandably results in a conviction of helplessness. If everything is always going to go wrong, why should I even try? We become depressed, and further into helplessness we sink. By catastrophizing, we create the illusion of being protected from disappointment and uncertainty. As the saying goes, one cannot be disappointed if we expect to be let down. And sure, we may not be out there dealing with that uncertainty, but we are also stuck here not enjoying the benefits of overcoming that uncertainty. One of the most common examples of self-sabotage as a result of catastrophizing is in the example of a man who has low self-esteem, has experienced a lot of adversity and rejection. He is much more likely to catastrophize in future relationships because his failure has become a part of his identity. It is now the active blueprint in his mind for his expectations. And we humans will actually work on a subconscious level to confirm those expectations. We want to be right about who we think we are. So when this man enters another relationship, his expectation of being betrayed and hurt will be incited by him. He may become overly jealous and threatened by other men in her life or that she meets. He may interpret interactions between her and other men as flirting. You have to understand, this man believes that this is destined to happen to him. So he will screen out her loyalty and focus on her potential infidelity. What he perceives, he takes as fact. He may make excessive demands to control her behavior, to make sure that she doesn't betray him. He may either be demanding certainties in a futile attempt to calm his inconsolable anxiety, or he may actively accuse her of betraying or hurting him. And what do we generally see as a result of being in a relationship with this kind of man? The woman either leaves or becomes a shell of her former self because she didn't leave. So given that she leaves, the guy can now confirm that he was destined for heartbreak. Expecting the worst is one of the best ways to manifest the worst. Rumination. Anxiety is also characterized by an unhealthy preoccupation in unhelpful thought patterns known as rumination. The word itself means to chew the cud, as a cow, which is known as a ruminant animal with its 4 stomachs that digests its food over and over again. There are 3 main paths to rumination. Intrusive thoughts that you immediately lock onto and follow, when reflecting on things, and when excusing away the necessity for action. We can ruminate about things that have already happened, and we can ruminate about how we anticipate the future could unfold. Rumination about the past can be a sign of regret. Rumination about the future can be a sign of anxiety. Rumination is, of course, a healthy and necessary thought process. Now, hear me out here. Sometimes we are best served by introspection because our brains are not always capable of weighing up all the variables in the moment. Sometimes we need to go away and have a think. It is when we get sucked into and dwell for too long on the negative thoughts and feelings about events, mistakes, images, or emotions that rumination becomes a toxic and disempowering practice. In the instance of a past event, we try in vain to rewrite the narrative with what we now retrospectively think we should have done or not done. We reimagine how it might have gone if only we did the thing or said the thing we should have. Hindsight, as they say, is 20/20. But we take that hindsight and we torture ourselves with it. We weave these fantasies of a better past only to have to come out of it to be starkly reminded of the reality of what actually did happen. Solutions to anxiety. So, with all this said about the subcomponents of anxiety, how do we address anxiety itself then? Thankfully, there are a few evidence-based methods, starting with framing. Framing is the interpretive lens we see things through, and a frame can have a level of strength to it, determined by the strength of your conviction in that frame. A person who is experiencing anxiety is under the influence of our negativity bias, and therefore much more likely to frame things negatively and anticipate the need to cope with a negative outcome. They are also much more susceptible to taking on the frame of others when their frame fails. Reframing is when we switch out our interpretation with a better one, normally a more realistic and helpful one. Obviously, an obstacle is going to present some sort of challenge, effort or innovation. And since that is often outside our comfort zone, we elect to be helpless to problems happening to us. Maybe then someone can come along and rescue us. So instead of going down that dark road to nowhere, let's take the other road. The road that says that it's an opportunity to grow. Something that life is doing for us instead of to us. When we take this interpretation, we have a chance here to train our ability in some way and even to gather the data from failure. Coming back to the public speaking scenario I posed to you at the beginning, why were you anxious? Sure, it may seem like that situation was inherently anxiety-provoking, but what if I told you that you could just as easily be feeling excited? Not everyone who publicly speaks is overcome with anxiety. In fact, some people are genuinely excited to speak in public. And that's not completely crazy. As far as your nervous system is concerned, anxiety and excitement are the same thing. They are both the same physiological experience. The difference is the framing that we're consciously running it through. So in other words, whether we're anxious or genuinely excited, it's a matter of whether we consciously frame the situation positively or negatively. By reframing an experience in more helpful, more realistic, and hopefully also positive ways, you can strengthen the neural connections between the activity and the positive thought process. And you will be more likely to take initiative in the form of right action before a negative thought pattern can take hold. We can literally trick our brains into turning anxiety into excitement. REBT therapy. Albert Ellis, PhD, was a pioneer of psychotherapy. Building upon the work of prior psychotherapists and thinkers, he developed a system of what he called Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy, or REBT, that was actually the forerunner of Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, or CBT. The following is a rundown of how REBT works. Point A is the adversity or activating event. This is the moment of a stressor or trigger. Point B is beliefs, the space where you make a judgment about what the adversity means. Point C is consequences, the place where you feel the resultant emotions from those beliefs. Point D is disputing. Here we confront and question our irrational beliefs. Point E is effective new philosophy. Here we will formulate a better, more realistic and empowering narrative. Let's go through these in a bit more detail. A, adversity or activating event. Life is suffering, in the words of Dr. Jordan Peterson. And he's right in the sense that life itself is inevitably going to present us with certain adversities. And it's not just ourselves that will directly face adversity. For the people in our lives and in our hearts will experience adversity, and we will need to support them through that. Adversity is not only a part of the human experience, it's an essential factor for us to grow. Like the saying goes, the comfort zone is a beautiful place, but nothing grows there. So, adversity is a motivating factor in the human experience. It's what makes us uncomfortable with comfort and to heed the calling of our purpose. And it is in pursuing that purpose and then giving your existence meaning that arms you with the tools to weather the adversity intrinsic to life itself. B, beliefs. Point B is where we form our belief about the adversity, informed by our core beliefs. Our beliefs are like the lens that we view our experiences, particularly adversities. Overall, we have two different kinds of beliefs: rational beliefs, or RBs, and irrational beliefs, or IBs. More on these as we continue. Take, for instance, the adversity of not being selected for a job interview. On the face of it, this is an adversity to feel bad about, right? But what if that job was only one of several you were applying for, and it wasn't even your number one choice? Now you won't feel so bad. In fact, you would feel freed up to pursue the better options. This step in the process is like the fulcrum point between stimulus and response. When we allow ourselves to go through into a reactive state, then we will just grab our beliefs on the way through straight to point C. However, if we are making the effort to see this process in action, you will notice that there is no rush to go to point C. Point B is a space that with discipline we can widen. And often we find that when we get to point C, the emotion has either lost its intensity or it's a better emotion entirely. C, consequences. Point C is where we experience the emotional result of our beliefs in regards to the adversity. The most common mistake we humans make is in thinking that point A directly leads to point C, that the adversity causes our feelings. We see this often characterized when we are criticized by someone and we immediately feel a certain emotion. The reactive brain is super fast. When thinking back on the reaction, we may say, "They made me feel X emotion." This is an understandable mistake, as our underlying assumptions are automatic and unconscious. They have been there your whole life, subtly setting the preconditions for your reactions. It becomes so automatic that it becomes invisible. In our perception at the time, and when remembering, we see only the adversity and then the emotions we feel as a direct causal relationship. D, disputing. Disputing irrational beliefs. How you will know that your beliefs are irrational is if they fail a process of logical examination, and or if they contain musts, shoulds, or oughts. These desires are of course absolutist. We deny the reality before us because it does not fit our preference, and so we make these demands in an effort to control reality and others. We see our desires as absolutely requiring that they be met. Of course, it is preferable that we get our needs met, but demanding that your needs must be met is overreaching, because sometimes your needs won't be met. Here follows two different methods of disputing your irrational beliefs: the empirical method and the pragmatic method. With the empirical method, you will interrogate your irrational beliefs on the facts of reality and you continue to interrogate this belief until you have an answer. Some examples of these questions would be, why must I always get everything right? What is the evidence for this belief? And what is the evidence that contradicts this belief? With the pragmatic method, you ask questions about the ongoing effect of having these beliefs. The intent is to honestly uncover the use of this belief in your life. Does it serve a benefit or handicap? Some examples of questions would be, how would I feel if I held strongly to this belief? What would happen over time if I held strongly to this belief? Would having this belief make me happy? And E, effective new philosophy. Here you will arrive at a more realistic interpretation, one that doesn't deny the facts and provides an empowering way to proceed. Some examples of this would be, I cannot prevent any and all mistakes, so when they happen, it's an opportunity to learn. When I do fail, the fallout is never as bad as I imagine. Even if I fail, then that is not a statement about my entire character or ability. In conclusion, your anxiety, while overwhelming and terrifying, is still within your control. And resolving and controlling of anxiety is going to take some work and discipline. You have become too accustomed to thinking and feeling this way, and I'm sure you have plenty of reasons that you can point to reinforce the idea that you are helpless to anxiety. However, this narrative has only kept you as a victim, and it's going to be one of the best things for you to look to your positives and adopt a more empowering narrative. Moving on to exercises. Number 1, have a laugh. This exercise is paradoxical, as in it's the easiest thing while the hardest thing at the same time. I want you to first find things that make you smile, and then I want you to find things specifically that make you laugh. If you're scrolling on social media, do a search for endearing videos like animals being loving towards humans. Find something that pulls your heartstrings in a good way. One of the first things you'll notice is that you are involuntarily smiling. There's a nerve in the skull called the trigeminal nerve, which has connections to your facial features, and it sends that information to the brain via the vagus nerve. This in turn results in a decrease of cortisol levels. If you are in a low mood, we are likely to repress the smile because it's a betrayal of how we're feeling at the time. We feel we must emotionally suffer enough to honour our hurt feelings, to have grieved them enough. I urge you to accept that how you feel can and does change. You can let go of that negative feeling because it's an emotion by itself is a temporary experience. When it's more consistent, that's known as a state, a consistent mode of being in that emotion. You don't have to stay there. You can choose to move to that different place. Number 2, the havening technique. As the name suggests, to create a haven is to create a calm place of safety. And that's what this technique is all about. To create somatic safety in our bodies. Havening touch, as it's called, concentrates on the 3 areas of our body which create the most delta wave production in the brain when stroked. That being the forehead and face, our upper arms, and the palms of our hands. Notice that these are the areas that mothers will most often stroke to soothe their child when in distress. So consider this like a condensed physiological form of reparenting, okay? So, to begin with, I want you to rate your level of anxiety, stress, or upset out of 10. Then close your eyes. As you close them, you're going to be bringing to mind a positive and empowering mental resource, something that makes you feel safe and resilient. If you find it uncomfortable or triggering to close your eyes, that's fine. You can instead choose a fixed point in front of you and then look at that. Take the time to find this positive image and step right into it. Feel yourself immersed in this resource. As you are doing this, I want you to start gently rubbing your palms together, back and forth, so the whole length of the hand has contact with the other. If rubbing doesn't feel right, then perhaps try gently patting your open hands together. Another place you can stroke is the upper arms, starting from the shoulder and going down to the elbow. If stroking doesn't feel right, then perhaps try gently patting your arms, going up and down your forearms. Lastly, another place you can stroke is the forehead and the face. Again, if stroking doesn't feel right, perhaps try gently patting around the forehead and the face. There will probably be one of these that will be best for you, so just concentrate on what is most comforting to you. We're not massaging here, so no real pressure is necessary, just very light friction or touch. By this point, you have likely found which of these works best, so keep this going for a few more minutes, and we will want to be doing this for maybe 5 minutes overall. When you're ready, I want you to start slowly counting down from 30. As you approach 0, you're going to be going through a visual exercise, like taking items out of a box or walking down the stairs. The purpose of this is to distract your conscious mind and start feeding it with cues of safety as you come back to your regulated self. Now I want you to rate your level of distress from 1 to 10. Have patience if you're starting out with this and the decrease is smaller than you anticipated. This will get better with practice. Eventually you will get to the point where this technique can bring you right back down to 0. I'll tell you, I'm going to throw in one more exercise. Number 3, 5 things you're grateful for. Right now, I want you to resolve right now to make a list of 5 things that you are grateful for in your life. They can be literally anything. The first 5 things that pop into your head, go. If you cannot think of anything, then just check in with yourself. Take a moment to notice your breathing. Are you still breathing? Yes, there's the breath. You can be grateful for that. Really, be grateful. The breath is a reminder of the endurance of life. Really enjoy the fact that you can breathe. Is that going on your list now? Tell you what, you needn't agonize over anything not making the list or making the list. My intent is for you to repeat this exercise every day before bed. Not only will you begin to notice general improvements in your ability to be more grateful, but you will also be entering sleep with an attitude of gratitude, a preventative to the kind of negative ruminating thoughts that can ruin our quality and duration of sleep. We've now reached the end of our chapter on anxiety. Thank you so much for watching.